Hello, hello, beautiful listeners. Let's do this thing. Welcome to the new year, whether it is a happy one or some other kind of emotion. I will let you discern. I am here to, regardless of where you are starting off, what you're feeling as you enter into this new year, because let's cozy up to it. It's a mixed bag for us. Regardless of how you're feeling, what are ways that you can be building the rhythms and routines that are going to steward you through this year, and to have some fun thinking about what are some of those big picture ways that we can start to think about the year as we embrace the natural disruption that is the flipping of the calendar from December to January. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with geeking out on some definitions. And it is not just because I love words, it is because we can't change what we don't see. So these definitions are going to be there for us to create distinctions, to help us see what's different, for example, between a resolution and an intention. Like, let's talk about that. So we're going to talk about some words, and then we're going to put those into context. And really where we're going to spend the heart of our time is on two things. First, how can you for yourself create a right fit approach as you think about the whole of the year? And then second, we're going to talk about how. How do you lead with vision, specifically as we talk about building rhythms and routines to support you? Because though I know that your visions, which I hope you cast, and if you haven't listened to last week's episode on what do you want, go back, listen on your own time, like cast that vision. But regardless of what your vision is, where you will have in your specific vision unique things to do and a unique roadmap to create, what I am confident in is that the rhythms and routines that you create to support yourself, that is a foundational way that you can set up your vision regardless of what it is. So we're going to talk about that. Okay, but as promised, let's first start with some definitions, friends, shall we? Here we go. So when we're going to be talking today about finding the right fit approach, I'm going to talk about three key areas. So let's start out by creating some definitions. What is a resolution? And I want you just to notice without judgment for yourself, like what pops up as you hear the word resolution. I have observed in the last decade, there has been a shift to like, there are still people who talk about resolutions, but there's so much more variation now on how we think about what are we committing to at the start of the year. And yet, whether you are pro or anti-resolution, the definition of a resolution is a firm decision to do or not to do something. I'm resolving, I'm resolute, right? This is my resolution. I'm either yes, doing this, or also resolution, I'm not doing this. Great. Another way that I, as a coach, might think about a resolution is it's a commitment. And I think what kind of has a flavor when we talk about New Year's resolutions is it feels additive. Like, what am I recommitting to? What's that new thing? And because we know, I was talking with my strength trainer, bless him, who I've been working with for the past several years, and he talks about how he gets a lot more phone calls starting in December and then trailing off by mid-February. And we see in the data the same kinds of things that happen with these new commitments that we make. So I think that's certainly contributing to resolutions getting bad rap. I myself personally don't make a resolution at the top of the year. I am, however, regularly looking at what are my commitments? What am I saying yes to? what am I saying no to for the sake of what I want to call in, what I have capacity for, right? So these are things to think about. But resolution, core definition, a firm decision to do or not to do something. Intention. Now, if you know Point Road Studios, you know core mission, set a vision, lead with intention, act on purpose. This is my wish for every person, every team, every organization that we support. I want you to be able to see what you want, set that vision. Therefore, lead with an intention, lead with a sense of this is where we're aiming to go, such that I can act with a sense of purpose, a sense of connection to why this matters for the sake of what am I doing this thing in the here and now. So I like me some intentions. I do set them. And an intention definition is a thing intended, an aim, or a plan. So notice the difference. Resolution, a firm decision to do or not to do something. An intention, a thing intended, an aim, or a plan. So again, whether you like a resolution or you like an intention, you like a mix of both, just notice how intention has a similar feel of like, yes, I'm wanting this. I'm heading towards this. I'm going to take actions towards this. And it's like an aim or a plan. It kind of builds in a sense of it might need to adapt. There's probably changes happening. There's less concrete directiveness when we say intention versus resolution. Or I might even say when we say intention versus commitment. I'm looking for what are the commitments I'm making to honor my intentions. That's how I look at it. But again, you may, as we get into what's the right fit for you, think about what works for you. But intention, that's the definition. Okay, so I wanted to throw those two out. The other definitions I want to bring in are around routines and rhythms. So if we think about a resolution or intention as the what, like what is the thing I'm reaching for, calling in, committed to? A routine or a rhythm is how we move with that resolution, that intention, that commitment. It's how we're moving. And a routine is a sequence of actions regularly followed, a fixed program. Whereas a rhythm is a strong, regular, repeated pattern of movement or sound. So one more time, routine, a sequence of actions regularly followed, a fixed pattern. A rhythm, a strong, regular, repeated pattern of movement or sound. What I think about there, again, kind of like resolution and intention, one is harder, one is softer. One is a little more directive, one is a little more open-ended. The routine, this is the way it's going to look every time. The rhythm, like there's a pattern to it, but it might show up at different moments. Like might not look the same every time. And the musician in me thinks about, yeah, you might have that melody, that refrain, but it might end up getting flipped on its head, or it might end up showing up in a different moment. It's just like seeing, okay, like what's the rhythm? What's the routine? So we'll talk more about that now as we get into first, starting with finding a right fit approach for you as you think about your year. So we're going to go back to resolutions, intentions, and I'm also going to layer in one more piece. Hold your breath. It's coming. So as we talk about resolutions, here's the question I'd have you consider. What am I committed to this year? What am I committed to doing? What am I committed to not doing? To holding sacred? To practicing? To shedding? To upholding? To loving, right? All different kinds of things that we can commit to. What am I committed to this year? That's the core question that underpins a resolution. That's what I would invite you to answer for yourself. And by the way, if you notice your commitment list, like if you write it out and then you look at it, ask yourself, do I have capacity to honor these commitments? We have a tendency, us beautiful, wishing, uh, ambitious human beings, we have a tendency to say yes, to commit to more than we can bite off. I myself have that tendency. So if you are with me sharing this tendency, take a moment, look at the list of commitments, and ask yourself, is this something I can commit to today, right now, this season? Okay, for intention. The question I would invite you to answer here is, what is your aim for this year? How will you give shape to your vision, to your wish, to your desires for this calendar year? Maybe you even think about, what's my roadmap for how I want to travel through the year? I like to actually imagine month by month. And between being a parent of 3 kids, working in a house, again, working, and my husband also working, I can knowing I mean, I already know where I'll be in July. I know events happening in March. I know events happening in September for work. I see, I can see where I'll be moving through the year. I know some fun things that we're doing in our weekends with our family. We're skiing uh, January through the middle of March. So I have like real shape and definition through what's happening in the near term in Q1. Anyway, you can kind of say, okay, what do I already know to be true? What else do I want to fill in? And also, when I look at what I know to be true, is there anything I want to adapt? Cozy up to that. Um, what is your aim? How will you give shape to this vision, to this aim, to this intention? And what's your roadmap for how you want to travel through this year? Okay, so hold this, step into it, think about it. And the third way that I wanted to talk about how you might approach kind of the broad strokes of your year. You can make a resolution, you can set an intention, you can make many resolutions, many intentions, check how many you have. You can also have a theme. And one of the popular methodologies for this that I hear in the human being landscape is, what's my word of the year? You look at Pantone and Sherwin-Williams and Benjamin Moore, they'll tell you their color of the year. Well, I say, like, we too, we human beings, we can have a color of the year. We can have a song of the year, right? It's about setting a theme, whether through a word, a painting, an image, a song, a practice. Like, what's the way that I'm giving a theme to the year? And so I thought for me, as I was thinking about these, though I am setting intentions, I haven't set any new resolutions. I am using the intentions to gut check um, what my commitments are. And I'll give you one example. So one intention on a very micro level that I'm setting this year is to play with bullet journaling. I am a visual learner. I love lists. So there's a lot of things about bullet journaling that appeal to me. I also have a sister, Phyllis, what's up? I have a sister who does this and sends me pictures of what she's doing. She has for more than 1 year. So this is not the first time I've seen this and had this intention. I've maybe like done 3 pages of some kind of bullet, like I'm trying out bullet journaling, and that goes away and never sustains. But I've been in a practice for the last month on where I've been writing out lists in a very particular way in my work life. And as I'm thinking about bullet journaling, I'm like seeing how it could help me integrate some things and also check when I'm overcommitting. So, anyway, that's an intention I have. And I have not yet made a commitment to do it. So I'm like, I have an intention. I'm not going to overwhelm myself with it, but I'm taking steps to explore that, and I'll see if a commitment emerges. Stay tuned. There may be a bullet journaling episode near you. Who knows? If you're great at bullet journaling, please message me. I would love to hear what you like and what works for you. But around themes, I wanted to offer. I was thinking, okay, how am I like when I think about some of these themes and what pops for me? Um, First of all, I had a lot of fun thinking about what's my color of the year, and I have a very particular, almost like orange red, but like neon, like it's kind of like not quite at a neon level. If you're watching the video of this podcast, I have a hat that I'm wearing that's very much in this zone. But it's like an intensive orange with a lot of red in it. And that is not a color that um, I have called in a lot in my life. I tend towards cooler tones, a lot of blues, a lot of greens, um, and even like more recently purples and pinks. But I don't know, orange is speaking to me, so I'm like I'm embracing this like neon orange red that is that's speaking to me. That feels like my color. I don't know, something about that. Just that was the color that emerged to me when I was holding this question, like, what's my color of the year? And as I was thinking about a word of the year, and this is me and my intuitive listening, I really like paused, took a breath, like listened in, like what word or phrase was bubbling up. And I noticed first the phrase release and uphold. And I'll talk in a minute about like a what is my primary theme that all of this is kind of funneling up to. But when I think about release and uphold, that is like this continuous process I've been in now for quite some time of like, let me shed what is no longer serving me and let me honor and uphold the things that are. And that is, I'm finding for myself quite an intensive process of discerning and paying attention and taking action as a result. Boundary setting comes up a lot for me here. The other word that emerged, which I is a word that I connect more with this orange color, um, is radiate. And I almost had a sense of like radiate is like the presence I want to be bringing into things. This is how I want to be. I want to emit that energy out, like shine out light, not just my own light, but the infinite light that I see around us. Like see it, appreciate it, like radiate out. And I see releasing and upholding as actions I'm taking that are allowing me to continue to radiate. Like that's again, like, okay, that's not, uh, I'm sharing all of this detail because what I want you to see is that this isn't like, here's that one thing and it's only one thing. It's like, what are these pieces? What connects and allowing for that. And that's okay. Like letting things be in that way. Okay. The last thing I wanted to say, and this is really the primary theme that I see radiating and releasing and upholding in my orange color, it's all in service to this. When I think about what's most important in the whole of my life, professionally, personally, like the entirety of my being, when I'm looking to 2023, I'm like, what I'm focused on is structures to support. I I have been in a deep learning and unlearning around what are those things that will support me. And that's everything from the how we flow through the spaces that we occupy in our home to how I'm building digital spaces for my clients to people I'm adding to my team to support me in my own learning, my own growth. And this I just see this as like this is my path forward right now. And you know what? It's not an entirely new thing in 2023, and I feel quite certain it won't be tied up with a bow in December at the end of 2023. At the same time, the same way that last year I was like, this is my year of no. this is my year of building structures to support, getting clear on what's needed, putting them in place, bringing that into light. And I feel a high degree of confidence that those structures is what's going to also allow the light radiating out. Okay. So I want you to think about resolutions, intentions, themes. You may choose none of this helps me. Great, let it go. You don't have to. You absolutely don't have to. And whether you are holding it as like something special for this year or it's something you want to play with, like go back to those questions, which will be in the show notes. Go back to those questions and just reflect on these prompts. What is my word of the year? What is my color of the year? What is my intention? What's my aim? What am I committed to? This is where I want you to play and explore. Find what works for you, including doing nothing, including trying them all on. Like, that's great. That's the fun. And I go with what feels good to you. This is your ability to answer which one of these things works for me, or do all of them work for me, or does something else that Sharon didn't mention work for me, or whatever. Your ability to discern that is your ability to start listening to yourself. And whether you call that your inner being, your spirit, your soul, but like this is you hearing yourself, your intuition, and your ability to listen to yourself that way will guide you on the path for how you lead with your vision, how you can design yourself. And um, and I'm telling you, you have the ability to quiet the noise and hear it. And it's very easy to let the distractions of what exists in the whirl around us quiet it such that we don't pay attention. So I want you to pay attention. And simply by saying, am I setting a resolution? Am I setting an intention? Do I have a word of the year? Like which of these speaks to me? That's honing your ability, strengthening the muscle so that you can do this when the stakes are higher. Let's talk about building rhythms and routines to support you. This is the how, this is the moving. If you go back and listen to the beginning of last week's episode, I spent a lot more time orienting these actions in time. Quick snapshot of it is we want to look back to say, where am I coming from? What's my story? What's the narrative I'm telling? Then we want to cast out into the future and get clear. What do we want? Where are we headed? And for the sake of what? And what we want to take from looking back and getting clear on what we want is from looking back is that sense of ease and alignment of where we're coming from. And as we look ahead, it's that sense of hope and purpose and inspiration for where we're going. And then you want to shed the details of it and say, okay, I get it. Those are the details. But let me come into the present. How will I take actions in this moment to move me forward? Connected to who I am, honoring who I am, and inspired by what I see as possible that lies ahead. How do I move with that? How do I take aligned and inspired actions? How do I move this way? And as I shared at the top of today's episode, how you move will be unique to what you want to call in. There are specific things that you will want to be doing that no one else that will not be a right fit for anyone else. And thinking about the rhythms and routines of this year, I am certain are going to support you. Even if all you're doing is recommitting to what you want those rhythms and routines to be. So let's start with routines, right? This is it's the fixed pattern, right? That's what we're talking about here. And when I When I want you to think about the routines, consider for yourself, what is an ideal start to your day? Like how, and even notice without judgment, like what's the current state? You might also say, what's an ideal close to your day? An ideal way to end things before you close your eyes and drift off to sleep. What sequence of actions can you commit to on a regular basis? What sequence of actions can you commit to on a regular basis? Now, notice the difference of those first two prompts: ideal start, ideal end. That's kind of like setting the vision for those parts of your day. And then the commitment is really helping you filter down to, is that realistic? Like, what's realistic? And no, again, that can change as you move through this week and next week and this month and this quarter and on through the year. But you want to make sure that what you're saying yes to does feel feasible by your own measure. Doesn't matter to me so much what other people think, but what do you think? Do you buy the commitment that you're making? That's what I want to make sure exists. And and I'll just offer some of the things that I'm thinking about. So routines are, let's see, how can I say this? There's something I'm learning. I'm really practicing routines. I notice that having a fixed pattern has been hard for me. I've struggled with it. It continues to be one of the gifts of the pandemic for me, that because suddenly my 3 at that point in time when the pandemic started, 2nd grade, kindergarten, and toddler aged children were home with us while my husband and I were both working in an intensive moment of our professional lives, and and also still literally building the house around us. And we couldn't get by with the way we had been doing routines. So I acknowledge that this is something that I'm not like, rinse, repeat, let's get that routine going. Now I have a lot of rhythms. I'm pretty good at rhythms. We'll get into that in just a moment. But I was asking myself, thinking about the start and the close of the day, around what are those patterns I want to call in. And so I'm going to share this with you in the hopes that maybe it, again, spurs on your own best thinking. So for me, I'm thinking about starting the day with, I am regularly, like, it would be surprising if other people are up before me in my house. So I'm thinking of starting my day with either a meditation or a chant, like just quiet. And I'm not thinking half an hour, I'm thinking short, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 1 minute, if that's all I have time for, but like really taking this time to quiet the noise. And then, and this would be, these are all things I've done, but not in this fixed pattern. So for me to be like, okay, I'm going to start there. Then make my cup of coffee, have one cup of coffee. That's a shift I've made in 2022, is to no longer start with many cups of coffee. I have other things I'm warm beverages I'm introduced in instead, but I like my one cup of coffee. And what I'd like to add into this is to read while I drink it. Like if I'm up and still it's just me, to just take those moments to read. That feels lovely. Then I'm sure if I'm up much earlier, I will may have time to putter and listen to podcasts, and things that I definitely do right now are part of my routines today. Um, but the next big thing for me is I want to meditate, chant, have that cup of coffee, and read. Then I want to make sure I'm having time with my family before school, and like really be present with them and support them in their routines. I won't take you through their routines, but I want to be there to steward them in their routines. And then I want to have a transition to work in the morning. And that for me, I'm thinking about cold plunging, whether that is going to the community of women who I cold plunge with, or walking to my watering hole, or as I did today, walking to the pond and breaking the ice and getting in for 2 minutes, just sitting there in the cold and being like, okay. And really, I should say sitting in the water, calling the cold in, because I wasn't like, oh, I'm in this cold, this is terrible. It really does feel like a lovely, invigorating practice. Today was muddier than usual because my pond is quite muddy. Um, but that to me is a great transition. So that's a way I want to start the day. And I have similarly thought through at the end of the day, I want as a family for us to do a collective pickup as we transition, like pick up an audit of, do we have backpacks packed? Or if it's the weekend, is the ski bag packed? Um, are the things that we've taken out put away? Not looking, this will be my practice, for perfection, but looking for basic, what we took out got put away, and what we need for tomorrow is set. So doing that together. Then reading with my kids. I'm thinking about maybe doing that where I'm upright. So a current pain point in my routine is I have a very set routine where I read and cuddle with my children and then I fall asleep. We call that mommy got slimed. Happens quite frequently. And it contributes to the fact that I go to bed, at 8 o'clock on a not uh, unusual basis. And then I'm waking up real early. I've had a lot of sleep, but I'm up and it's 3 a.m. and I'm awake and I've had 7 hours of sleep. And I savor those quiet hours, but I would love to have more waking time. Have an intention. There's an intention to have more waking adulting time with my husband, Colin. So that's something I'm thinking about. So reading with the kids, perhaps upright. I like reading with them. Maybe I'm not closing out bedtime, but I do the start of bedtime and Colin comes in after. And then I like the idea of doing a parent pickup. So like same, whereas that we've done the family audit and really focusing on the kids, are they ready? Now the parents are coming through and together while listening to music that we're doing our own version of this. What's happening the next day? Like just having that time. And then uh, energy permitting, having creative time. Anyway, those are routines. That's how I'm thinking about my routines. I want you to think about your routines. Let's talk about rhythms and then we'll close it out. Okay, rhythms. I think about rhythms as the seasonal ways that I'm moving through the year. And there are some things that I'm thinking about specifically seasonally and some things that I'm thinking about that are rhythms annually. So it's not a routine, it's not going to happen in a fixed pattern. But for example, I have a rhythm of making sure that I'm getting enough sleep, that I'm working out, I'm eating well, I'm taking care of myself. That's not happening in a fixed pattern for me. So I don't have a desire to work out every morning in the same way. It feels harsh to me. And my schedule allows me, and I have ways that I work out. Sometimes I'm running with Colin. I do have one weekly routine of seeing a strength trainer every Thursday at 8 a.m. But I have a lot of other things like riding the Peloton, often with Allie Love. Uh, but the rhythm of when I'm doing that changes. Um, Sleeping. I have had a tremendous issue with waking up in the middle of the night. I am very good at going to sleep, but I'm waking up in the middle of the night. Sometimes it is like 3 to 5, and depending on how early I went to bed, like I might have had enough sleep. But sometimes I might have gone to bed at 10 and I'm up at 1 and I'm wide awake. And I'm like, so I have a rhythm of commitment to like getting myself back to sleep. It's something I'm really practicing, like how to get back to sleep. Um, so a lot of my annual rhythms have to do with what those of you who've been with the podcast for a while know. I talk about being fit to lead. Am I eating well? Am I moving? Am I taking care of my body? And so paying attention to that. The seasonal rhythms that I'm watching are things like what are the out of house activities and what are we saying yes to and no to? What are home projects I want to get done in certain seasons? What do we have as family wishes? And a big thing, I mentioned this earlier already, that I look at is what are the ways that I imagine myself moving from January to February and on through the months such that I can land in December? Like, how do I imagine that movement feeling? So, some things I would have you consider as you think about your own rhythms. I want you to think about What are the repeated patterns that you want to call in? What are those patterns you want to call in this winter? What about in the spring? Do they change as you move to summer and into fall? Right? How do you see those patterns evolving or staying the same as you move throughout the year? And just notice that without judgment. Maybe you're noticing, what are the patterns for myself? What are those repeated patterns with my loved ones, with my colleagues? Really paying attention to that. All right, dear listeners, that is what I wanted to share with you today. So thank you as ever for listening. Please know that if you have questions, if you have wishes, if you have curiosities, I would love to hear from you. By all means, please feel free to reach out. And know that I will continue to hold the belief, my deeply held conviction, that as you are exploring what is your way that you want to start this year, what are the rhythms and routines that you want to call in, that I'll be here believing that there is nothing stopping you. So go on ahead and get after whatever it is that you really want.